Welcome to the world's smallest aviation museum at the Flying Circus here in Bealton, Virginia. This is a museum that we've gotten together. We'll just show you the inside of some of the old radial engines. We've got connecting rods, the front and rear cases of the engine. This is a cylinder. This is from a 7-cylinder Continental engine. And then we have breakdowns, pictures of the various parts inside. This shows a cylinder, all the parts that you have to be worrying about. This is why the jet engines last longer than the reciprocating engines, because look at all those parts, and this is just from one cylinder, where the jet engines have a couple spools with blades on them and just a few parts. They last forever. So we have pictures of this. Here's our. This is the color scheme of our first Waco. We still have this. We're restoring it. And that's my grandson. He's an American Airlines pilot now.
And he flies out here, right?
He flies, well, he used to fly this, but now he flies number 8. And then we also have our little Navy plane that we put together for kids. Little kids up to about 40 pounds, and they're able to fly this, make a couple landings, and then we give them a Navy logbook. Has a stick in it, goes up about 3 feet and comes down. It's kids love it, and the parents waste a whole roll of film just on one flight for the kids. But it's just another thing that the kids can enjoy here at the circus.
And you also do a hayride?
I do the hayride, and that's something that is a lot of fun. I kid with the people about being educational and entertaining, and we do ask them and tell the little kids, maybe ask them, what's that orange thing on top of the engine, which is a windsock, on the top of the hangar. We say, what's that? And they'll say, well, that's, they'll say, well, I ask them what it does. It tells the airspeed and the wind speed and also the direction, which is essential here in aviation work. And we just ask questions like that and get a lot of fun with it. We also do some agricultural stuff, ask them if they know the difference between hay and straw, and tell them the difference. And it's just an interesting ride for the people. We also, one of our guys made a locomotive, and a train locomotive, out of the gas tank we have there. It just looks like a real locomotive with the rear wheels and everything like that. So it's just a fun ride, and it takes about 15 minutes. We also stop and look at an old airplane wing that we tell them how we fix that up, recover it with fabric and stitch it, rib stitch and everything like that. It just furthers their education and gives them something to do before the show. And then we also have these little planes out here that the little toddlers, they play with those instead of watching the air show, but at least they'll be asking to come out. Let's go out to the circus again to fly these little airplanes. So we have an enjoyable time with that. We also have some of our old Navy books back here. Those were training books that they used in World War II to instruct the people on aircraft structures, fuel. And I even have a logbook there, one of mine from 1945, where I got a whole month of flying Hellcats. And then we have, well, here's a picture that we have of our current Waco, old number 8.
And what's that instrument up there? It looks like a radio.
That's an old radio, and right now they have miniaturized so much of this that the ones now are about this size, well, they're about a quarter of that size right there. And the weight means a lot in aviation. So that, I just have it there to show them what a standard radio was. And
talk about the biplanes. What are the biplanes made of?
Most of them have a...
start the sentence with most of these biplanes, because we are not on this.
Okay, most of the biplanes they have a metal tubular structure, a strong steel structure. It's a 4130 alloy, which is stronger than mild steel. That's all welded up, and then on top of that they put forming wood structure on top of it to give it the roundness and make it a little more streamlined. The wings have 2 long spars, wooden spars that might be 6 inches wide and 1.5 inches thick. and then the front spar and rear spar, and then the ribs fit over that. Once they're on, then we tie it all together with some bracing wires inside the various ribs. Then we start covering with the fabric, either grade A cotton, Irish linen, or Circus. Most of us are using Circus now because it's long lasting and it's strong. We put it on, glue it on a wing, let's say, and put some on the top, some on the bottom of the surface, and then get it all, try to get it stretched as much as possible, but there's always going to be wrinkles, so you have to come along with a household iron or a heat gun. Not a hairdryer head, but a larger, more powerful heat gun. And you spray that with heat, and it finally all shrinks, and you think you'll never get it done, but finally the last wrinkle comes out, and then you're ready to put a covering over it. And most of us use a butyrate or nitrate cellulose dope on it. It's fast drying, so you put maybe 8-10 coats of it on, and but you also have to, before that, stitch that fabric back to the ribs so that it doesn't biller up, and that's a process that's really time consuming. And after you finish that, then you have to, and you get the dope on it, then you have to mix some aluminum powder with that dope and cover the whole surface so that it is all silver and there's no light can penetrate, because that keeps out the ultraviolet light and it just doesn't deteriorate like if you didn't have that on. And after that's all done, you paint your colors on it, one color or two colors, and make it a little fancy. But that's essentially what covering, it's a lot of fun, and it's gratifying to see the finished product. And it might take a minute and a half to tell you how to rib stitch and do a wing, but for one guy to do one standard wing like these biplanes here, it would take a week and a half. It's that time consuming.
Tell me how the circus first started, the flying circus.
Well, it started, we had a bunch of guys flying.
The flying circus first started. I'm on it, remember?
Okay, the flying circus first started, actually we had a bunch of planes flying out of a field north of Warrenton, and they'd get together on a weekend, on a Sunday, and people loved to see these old biplanes, so they would clog up the road. The sheriff would have to be out directing traffic, and it got so bad they said, why don't you guys move someplace else so we don't have this traffic problem? So they finally found this place here at the Flying Circus here in Bealton. This is 208 acres that we got from two elderly ladies, and we got it and cleared some of the area. Most of it was cleared right here, and then put up the hangars, and then we did a lot of advertising. The first day we had traffic all the way down 17 back into here. The governor of Virginia came out to visit us. We had all kind of dignitaries, and we had a crowd that wouldn't keep. We thought, my God, this is a bonanza. We've got to have our own company airplane. We're going to have office buildings for ourselves. But after that first day, it sort of fall off a little bit. And then we had World War I aircraft. They were so hard to maintain and expensive. So after about 3 years, we saw we're either going to have to sell those things or go bankrupt. We found a guy up in the Poconos who wanted to start an air show, so we sold him. We all had signed a note for $90,000 for these old World War I airplanes, and they were nice. It was a nice collection. But with that holding it over our heads, we thought, well, let's sell them. We sold the whole bang. Even a 1919 Mack truck that was a showpiece, sold it all for $120,000. Got out from under it, and then we started using our own aircraft, the Wacos, the Stearmans, and one guy had, there were two fleets in. It was just a good collection. So we changed the format to the barnstorming area, the 30s, instead of the World War I type. And it worked out good. We're still doing the same air show today, and we modified it slightly. I remember I think about the third week we were doing this new show, one guy stopped by the gift shop where I was standing one Sunday, and he said, hey, I was up in Canada about 3 weeks ago, and I saw an act that was really good. He said, these guys brought out a frame that had 4 balloons on it. And he said, a guy got in the airplane, and he shot first, he went by, shot one balloon, and it hit the balloon, And then he went by the next time, he shot twice and he got 2 more balloons. And then he came back and was going to make another pass, and he shot. And as he did that, the balloon burst, but the frame come over and it revealed a girl with a pin bursting this balloon. So we thought, uh-oh. So that week, we made the frame and put some balloons on it. From that day forward to the very today, we have that same act in here. It's still a great act. The people love it. So we actually had the Flying Farmer. Unfortunately, he lost his ticket, his physical, last year, so he's not able to do his act anymore. But we have another fellow who takes the same Piper Cub up to about 4,000 feet. And when everything's quiet down here, we turn off the music, all the sound, and then he shuts the engine off. And the guy does acrobatics on the way down. And finally, when he's at the proper position, he makes a swing around, makes a base leg and in for final, and he rolls up with dead stick, the engine off, right in front of the announcer, and just as slick as a whistle. It's just a beautiful act. So the guys, whatever needs to be done, they seem to be able to do it. And we have good formation pilots, acrobatic pilots. It's just a good group we have here, and they're nice guys to associate with. I've been with them about 38 years, and can't say enough good things about them.
And let's talk about the wing walking.
The wing walking, that started real early, because that is what they really did a lot of it to attract attention in the 30s. So we had to do the same thing, and we had an old steerman then. It was Stan Paris. He was a congressman from Northern Virginia. He was a Air Force, had been an Air Force pilot, and then was a congressman while he was out here as the president of our show. And we'd use his plane. The guy would walk out, and with the wing walker, you have to be very careful. You have to make sure that you're right on top of the spar. You can't go back 1 inch or so, because then you're going to step on just fabric and you're going to go through. So the wing walker knows exactly where it is, and they'll walk on the spar, get out, and then they'll wave to the crowd on one pass and then go upside down. For me, when I get a seat in an airplane, I don't get out of that chair. So it's something that even parachute jumping doesn't interest me. I mean, I got checked out on how to do it in the Navy, but I never had to do it. And but these wing walkers fascinate me. We had one gal that was in the White House photographic section. She was head of all the photographers. A Turkish gal. She was thin and wiry and really very athletic. And she did it quite a few years. And one spring in March, we would come out. We said, well, we'll practice a little bit. So she came out with a new nylon rope that she had, and she said, I want to try this. It gives me a little more stretch than the others. So she tied it on the front strut, and the guy took her, I think it was her friend at the time, took her up. And she got out and hung upside down, and when she tried to get back up and get a hold of the rope stretched, and she did not have the reach to get up to the strut. So she was stuck there hanging on this rope. She could not reach the strut. So messed around, and I was going to go up, tried to take my airplane, put it under a wing, but it was a March day, and it was so rough that I thought, no, it'll kill us both. We'll crash. So finally they said, okay, we'll bring her in as slow as possible. And they brought her in nice and slow and over in the tall grass. And as she was slowing down, I guess it might be 30 miles an hour, she let loose and tumbled a little bit. And we raced out there thinking, this girl's going to say, I'm never going to do that again. But when she got there, she said, she's sitting there calmly, she says, well, what I did wrong, I had this rope and it stretched. She said, I'm going to have to use the old rope again. So she went back to being a wing walker, and they did it for a couple years that way. And my daughter was also the wing walker. It was one of the few father-daughter wing walking acts we had, and now my son and my grandson fly the wing walkers, and so I'm sort of put out in pasture here now. I'm not as sharp as pilot as I used to be. I don't like to pass that word around, but that's what the truth is. That's about it.
It's really been a big family thing.
Oh, it's
kept it in the family. And how most people wouldn't understand that the whole family's been involved and they all love it. They come in religiously every Sunday,
And
they get paid.
That's true. It is a family affair with us. My son and I came out, I think the second Sunday was open, and it was it's so fascinating. These old World War I airplanes that just were unique to see and fly. We thought, well, we're going to join. So we had to sign this note to pay for all these planes, and we came out and we've been with them now for about 38 years. My grandson flies for American Airlines, and he flies the Waco. I've given ownership to he and my son for that. Another son is a FedEx pilot, and now that FedEx pilot's son is working to get his hot air balloon license. He wants to be a Remax balloonist when he gets into college here, when he has his summers off. So they're all interested in it. There's another grandson has his hot air balloon license and pilot license. So we do have the facilities for them, and we have a little plane that we're able to teach them how to fly. So they work that, and they fly with us on the Waco and do farm work. So it's a great family affair. We really enjoy it.
And let's just talk quickly about the hot air balloons, because that's the big attraction here, isn't it?
This is it. We have a hot air balloon festival the third weekend of every August. It's a 2-day affair, and the guys usually come in Friday evening, test their balloons. They'll go up. You'll see 10 or 20 balloons up in the air Friday evening, and then we actually on Saturday have the air show. But in the morning, the hot air balloons don't like the thermals and the heat of the afternoon, so they're actually vehicles that fly early in the morning when the winds are light and calm, or they'll wait until about 4 o'clock and the winds die down from all this thermal activity. And then you'll see them go ahead, and we have activities with them where we have one balloon will take off and he'll be the rabbit, and then 5 minutes later all the rest can take off, and whoever gets closest to the rabbit, he'll go out about 2 miles, set down, and then whoever can set down closest to him, then he then wins that prize. We also had another event where they taped a balloon, a small balloon, and an egg underneath the basket, and it's a tethered basket. They go up about 20 feet, and now it becomes a time effect. They come down, and they have to come down and burst the balloon, but not break the egg. And that, it really takes a lot of finesse as far as your heat and get the control of the balloon. Just events like that. We also have a big pole out in the center of the field that has a $200 check in it. Whoever can go 2 miles away from here, launch your balloon and come in and reach out of the basket and pick the check up, it's theirs. They haven't done it yet, but they've gotten darn close. But just events like that, and they have a good time. And we had so many balloons, it got so we sort of tried to limit it to about 20. So if you want to see hot air balloons, come see us here at the Flying Circus. It is great.
Well, this is a 1946 J3 Cub. It's got a 75 horse engine on it, and it's completely stock. Hasn't had anything done to it at all. So when I go up there and do what I do, it's done with the utmost care, because the airplane isn't made to do heavy aerobatics.
Let's talk about that. Tell us exactly. Talk me through what you actually do when you get out there. You climb up to a certain altitude. Talk me through it.
Yeah, it's primarily starts off with climbing up to altitude. I go up to 4,000 feet, and that's what takes more time during the act than anything else. I have to take off, climb. It's about probably about 12 minutes to get up to altitude. And then once I get up to altitude, I just make sure everything's secure one last time, make sure the doors are all buttoned up, and get myself spotted over top of the field, shut the engine off, just turn off the magneto switch. And once the propeller stops turning, I start diving, which takes about 500 feet to get up to the airspeed to do maneuvering, which is about 120 miles an hour. And I start off by doing just a standard Cuban 8, which is rather interesting doing it in an airplane like this, because you really can't push any negative on it, so you have to start rolling it before you actually get out of the top of the loop. And then after doing the Cuban 8, I usually follow up with some sort of turnaround maneuver, usually a reverse Cuban 8, and then come back, do a loop, turn around again, give them one roll, try and make a pass, just so it's down low enough and close enough where the people can hear as well as see that the engine is not running. And from what I've been told, the airplane makes rather unique sounds, so it's like a jet as it goes by because of the air that's flowing over the airplane, the wind noise. I don't get that same noise inside the cockpit. It's a lot, just a lot of rattling. It sounds like just a wave, constant wave of the ocean coming over inside the cockpit. But I usually get down to about 500 feet, which is my altitude that I have set as my reference point for turning in. I have certain places on the field mentally marked in my brain to where I want to be at this altitude, at this airspeed, before I touch down. I know how far I'm going to roll, and usually come in just a little hot. You have to depend on your brakes, and it ends up stopping where you want to stop. And it doesn't seem like it's all that exciting or thrilling from my end of it, but apparently to the crowd I get a very good response, and they seem to appreciate it. I actually, you know, it's nothing that I invented. It's something that I picked up from Bob Hoover and Dwayne Cole, some of my heroes from years ago. They used to do an energy management routine, and that's really what I'm doing, is what they were doing, is just exchanging altitude for energy so I can do the maneuver and show people that, you know, it doesn't matter if the engine's running or not, you can still fly the airplane and set it down safely.
Can you start this aeroplane when it's up there, once it's stopped?
Can I start the airplane again once it's stopped? Well, the answer is yes and no. During the act, if I dive the airplane fast enough, anything beyond 120 miles an hour indicated, the propeller will start to tick over. And as it ticks over, I can make sure the fuel's on and turn the switch on, and it'll start running just like you engage the starter. But to dive the airplane to 120 miles an hour, I have to exchange a lot of altitude to get that airspeed. So at a certain point during my routine, which is about 2,000 feet, once I get down to 2,000 feet, I really don't have enough altitude to safely get the engine started again, because if I dive the airplane from 2,000 feet, by the time I get to 120 miles an hour, I'm below my 500-foot altitude that I need to land. So, you know, once I get below 2,000 feet, I'm committed.
Now, for the viewers that are watching this, and you're going to have to repeat my questions because I'm not on it, we have to make it very clear that you cannot, there's no starter on this. You have to prop this baby to fire it up, right?
No, there is absolutely no starter on this airplane whatsoever. It's either you start it on the ground by hand, where somebody actually gets in front of it and pulls the propeller through fast enough to where the engine engages, or you have to get it going fast enough where the wind.
This airplane is a PT-17 Stearman. It was used by the Army Air Corps from 1941 through 1945 as a trainer. They use these to train the primary instruction for pilots, along with the PT-19 and several other trainer aircraft.
How did you get into flying?
Well, I came out to the flying circus.
No,
I
got into flying.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, I'm sorry. How I got into flying, I came out to the flying circus when I was 14 years old, and I bought a ride in a Stearman just like the one that I own now, and it hooked me on the aviation experience of flying old biplanes. And so I decided I wanted to be a pilot, and I worked on getting my private pilot's license on my own, and eventually became a pilot.
You come out to the circus every Sunday, or as many times as you possibly can. Tell me about that.
Well, I've come out to the circus since about 1975. I started working out here as a ground crew, and except for a short stint when I was in the Air Force and I was out of the, didn't live in Virginia, I have been coming out here almost every Sunday. I don't like to miss a show because I feel like I really get cheated if I miss a show because it's so much fun, and we only get to fly 6 months out of the year out here, so it's real important for me. I just like being out here every Sunday and being part of the team.
What's the biggest thrill you have when you come to the circus every Sunday? What is the biggest, in these words, the biggest kick I get is?
Okay. The biggest kick I get out of the circus is flying the air show. I really enjoy flying formation and flying with the other aircraft, and performing the show, and also taking people for rides in the airplane so that they can experience these flying in these old biplanes. And I really enjoy seeing people have a good time when they do that. And that's my challenge, to always make sure everybody I take up really enjoys it, has a great time.
Thank you. Okay, Stan, just tell me how you started, why you got into this, John, and I know you're a pilot. Will you talk through all that and why you do this at the circus?
Well, I was one of the kids that grew up with their dad as a pilot, and so from the earliest I can remember, I wanted to be a pilot. And we had this experience back in the 1970s when the flying circus was begun. We weren't the original group, but about the second year we got involved with it and found that this was our niche as far as aviation was concerned. Of course, with the old airplanes, it reminded us of the fact that we wished we had been born about 20 years earlier to be able to fly these things when they were a whole lot newer. And that sense of aviation, this golden age of aviation that we recreate out here at the Flying Circus, is really the most pleasurable flying to us there is.
And it's also a living history, isn't it? I mean, talk to me about this. I mean, it is a living history.
We consider what we do out here basically a living history of aviation. When we started, or the time that we've been here, it's interesting to remind ourselves that we've been flying for a third of the time that man's been flying. A couple of years ago we celebrated the 100th anniversary of flight. Well, even at that point we'd been flying for 30 years. So to be an aviation flying museum and exist for that long is really quite extraordinary.
Now, the unique part about this too, as everyone said, is you get a thrill, I mean, of getting all this act together. It's a very enjoyable act, a lot of fun, but people that actually get to fly in these biplanes.
Not only do we demonstrate what the old barnstormers did, but part of what the barnstormers did was do an air show with the purpose of giving rise to the people. Now, they are probably a little bit more mercenary than we are. We get a lot of our satisfaction from giving the ride to the folks. The smiles on their faces, the youngsters now over 30 years that come back and got their first ride here at the Flying Circus, and now they're in the military. They're a military pilot, they're a commercial airline pilot, they're a civilian pilot, but their first recollection of an airplane ride was here, and you can't put a price on that. So we make enough money to pay for the airplanes. I don't know of anybody out here that's making a whole lot of money, but we can keep the airplanes, we can keep them flying, we can maintain them, and again, we share them with the public, and to us that's extremely satisfying. We do remind the folks that would like to remind them that this is a nonprofit organization. The Flying Circus Foundation is nonprofit. We do our best to use the money wisely, and it's through the spectators that come out we gain the money to continue on, to build the facilities that make this a first-class operation, and maintain the airplanes and keep them available throughout the future as long as we can foresee it.